A man in his 70s entered slowly, accompanied by his wife. Nothing about him stood out, except maybe the cap he wore, well-worn, navy blue with faint gold embroidery. Most didn't notice it, but 5 young men seated at a nearby round table did. The couple took their seats and scanned the menu like they'd done dozens of times before. As orders came and conversation flowed quietly around the room, something began to shift. One of the young men stood up, then another. One by one, they began making their way to the older man's table. Without a word, the young men approached the table. Each one, in turn, reached out, looked the man directly in the eyes, and shook his hand, one by one. No hesitation, no embarrassment, just respect. The elderly man looked overwhelmed but composed. He tried to wave them off, but they wouldn't allow it. And then, just as quietly as they arrived, the men returned to their table. Dinner resumed, but something lingered in the air, a feeling no one could name. When the older man reached for his wallet to pay the bill, the waiter returned with a smile that said more than words ever could. The check had already been settled, but not by a stranger. It was them, the 5 young men, Marines. They had paid for the couple's entire meal and left behind only 2 words scrawled on the receipt. By the time the older man rose to thank them, they were on their way out. Yet again, they made their way to his table, not to boast, but to finish what they had started. In a line, each man approached, offered his hand, his thanks, and a brief embrace. The last of them, without a word, stood at attention and gave a crisp, silent salute. It was in that moment that the quiet became sacred. Only then did diners begin to realize what the cap had said. U.S. Navy Vietnam Veteran. And only then did they understand why the young Marines had acted the way they had. They hadn't seen an old man having dinner. They had seen a brother in arms, a living symbol of the path they now walked. And without cameras or applause, they did what was right. Outside, the men disappeared into the night, back to base or back to life. Inside, the veteran remained seated, eyes a little glassy, hand resting on his wife's. He hadn't expected the tribute. He didn't seek it, but it found him anyway.